creating this trusted framework and have people coming on it, and business happens at the speed of trust. Opportunities for all of us to build this thing together. Some people can create the software, some people can provide the marketing. We need to be diligent to make sure that we're not putting fake NFTs out and losing the values of trust, right? This is how internet should have been.
Doing a podcast with Sunil Cherian, a blockchain and supply chain leader, was really interesting for me because he explained in a lot of detail how supply chain management can impact the S&P, stocks, a country's economy, how prices get inflated if the supply chain gets impacted. I thought that was a very good way of understanding how important blockchain or decentralized technologies are for Web3 and for reconstructing this whole society. Through the pandemic, we saw a lot of pitfalls on, how items were not getting delivered, groceries were not getting delivered because of the mask restrictions, because of people not being able to physically come to work. So having a transparent supply chain is like being the backbone of the country. And in the podcast, Sunil Cherian really explains it very well. Web3 is going to be a massive, massive landscape for transformation, and so many startup ideas are going to come from there. And Sunil gets into in-depth analysis of this. I think all you youth entrepreneurs who want to think about doing a startup in blockchain or cryptocurrency should listen to this podcast very carefully. You will get lots of insights, lots of ideas, and most importantly, the why. Why is Web3 or cryptocurrency or blockchain so important? Why decentralized technologies are going to create a better future? So Sunil explains that very well. Please watch it till the end. And without further ado, let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Pitch Cafe podcast. This is a place where talent meets coffee. It is a place where several accomplished people get roasted, boosted, or toasted. Today, our accomplished guest is probably going to be boosted because he has passed the phase of being roasted and toasted. He's rolled out a successful startup in blockchain, and hey, look, I'm holding his book, Blockchain Impact, with me. He, among with several blockchain and crypto leaders, have come up with this amazing collection of technical publications. I have gone through this book, and you can also get your copy. But hey, first, why should you get this book? And what is in this podcast for you today? Today, our blockchain leader is not only an expert in supply chain management, crypto, blockchain, this whole new technology, but he is also very excited about philanthropic initiatives in education. He has been in Silicon Valley for a long time. He understands this landscape very well, but he has many cross border collaborations. So, without further ado, let me bring on Mr. Sunil Cherian, a very good friend, but most importantly, here for this podcast, he's a serial entrepreneur, angel investor, and a blockchain technology leader. When he said this one statement, I thought he must come on the podcast. He told me that a nation's S&P index, the stock exchange, gets affected by supply chain management. Our currency gets inflated because there is a problem in supply chain, and that is why supply chain requires new kinds of entrepreneurs. I was totally blown away. These are two worlds which usually don't meet, and hey, this person here can explain everything about it. I said, Sunil, please come on the podcast. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Sunil Cherian.
Thank you, Vida, for such an amazing introduction. That was so fantastic. I'm really, really appreciative of the opportunity to be on the podcast. And I got my coffee with me here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, this is Pitch Cafe. All of you guys, please go get your coffee. But just as an icebreaker here for all our coffee seekers, Sunil, how can you explain your amazing journey as a serial entrepreneur, philanthropist, angel investor here in Silicon Valley? How can you explain this into top three takeaways for youth entrepreneurs? There are lots of youth entrepreneurs watching this show. What is your top three takeaways from your journey in entrepreneurship?
So, in many ways, I might say I was lucky. Yeah, and in some ways, might also say I was seeking, right?
Mhm.
So when I was doing my undergrad in engineering in India, it wasn't fashionable, at least in our college, to actually go to US, right? And nobody knew how to do that. So I actually would go meet my friends who were studying in IIT, get some of their GRE preparation material, some of their other AGRE material, etc., and kind of learn from them. And I took GRE 3 times.
Hmm.
First time it got cancelled. Second time it got cancelled, and I had a good TOEFL score and had a decent AGRE score, and then I could at least articulate my passion and value and why I want to do this. And college was willing to bring me on with a scholarship that they thought I would go for PhD. So I came in with just a few months of work experience in India. Then I came to US. I've been here almost 30 years and been in Silicon Valley since 92. And this ecosystem here has actually helped me quite a bit. Right? I've grown quite a bit with the network, the connections, the mentors. So I learned a lot from working with people, going through ups and downs, some startups that have done extremely well, some businesses that haven't done well. So you kind of learn along the way. And this is not coded anywhere. This isn't really sitting in books, or nobody's teaching in schools. Nobody teaches financial systems to people.
Yeah.
So along the way, you want to be able to share, because a lot of people shared, and that's why we are able to get to wherever we are able to get to. So how do we transfer that knowledge to other people?
So this is amazing. This was like your third full-on serious startup
Yes,
venture. Like you
yes,
took the plunge the third time.
yeah.
So what kind of mindset are you in usually? What kind of advice do you have for the youth who are very scared of getting into the startup world? Making the plunge. You did it three times and you got it almost right every time. So what is your takeaway? What is your takeaway?
Not necessarily. I mean, you take the plunge. Sometimes you lose. Sometimes you win. I'd actually co-authored a book with Seema Giri before. I know,
Mhm.
and in that I talked about failures, right?
Yeah.
So failures are actually lessons, right? That you needed to learn, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So, but if you don't take a step forward, you'll never learn, right?
Yeah.
So in my mind, failure is when you are on the ground, you're out for the count, and you don't step up. You don't get up, right? So as long as you're able to get back up and start thinking again, start doing something, you will
Yeah.
always have a second opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So that's a great advice, Sunil. I think it's relevant for all times, for all ventures. So yeah, so coming back to your exciting journey in blockchain now, tell us more about that. You really got me thinking when you discussed how supply chain management is like a really hot vertical, and you're now talking about blockchain applied to supply chain. So tell me why you picked supply chain, how it's affecting the S&P, that whole discussion. Can we
So
start with
part
something?
of what got us down this path is when we started looking for, so in my early days of mathematics and computer science, etc., you always go back to first principles. 0 plus 1 equals 1, 1 plus 1 equals 2, therefore 2 plus 1 equals 3, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
In when we started looking at where blockchain would make sense as an
Mhm.
application, because the thesis was we'll build a middleware layer, we'll make it as easy to use as a database. We'll have REST APIs that people can use. Any application you can use in 2 or 3 hours. Any programmer can actually use our APIs and use blockchain. Now, where should you apply your time and effort in building applications, right?
Right.
Blockchain is a good technology for places where there is lack of trust,
Mm.
lack of transparency, where there is friction. For example, outside of finance, supply chain was the next biggest possible market to go after, right? We didn't want to go after finance because there's too many big money companies going after it. We didn't want to stack with that. Okay, that is one reason.
So you're technically in the Web3 space.
We are an enabler for the Web3 space.
Enabler for Web3. So that is also a very hot vertical.
Yes.
So supply chain is a hot vertical in itself. Blockchain itself is also another hot vertical. Now your enabler for Web3, if you
They're
look at
not
it,
verticals per se, they are enabling technologies, right?
technologies, correct. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Supply chain, of course, is a vertical,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We can take that as a vertical. So fantastic. In this book on blockchain impact, which you are one of the authors. Your chapter is called Reimagining Supply Chain Management with Blockchain. I think you pretty much explained that very well. Now, there are lots of other things this book covers on how to build a great blockchain ecosystem. And there is also a conversation about tokenizing digital assets.
Yes.
This book itself is a block in a blockchain. It's an amazing thing. This is also an asset. Now, if you think about those things, what is your advice to youth entrepreneurs who want to start a startup in blockchain? What are all the pros and cons of being a blockchain or a crypto entrepreneur? Or crypto entrepreneur. What are some of those?
Right. So we started on the supply chain. We didn't go after the money like other people did, right? And the reason is when you start breaking it down to first principles, digital transformation has been a big wave in the recent past, right? People are trying to go digital, and we can see the benefits of digital. But when you look at the internet technologies that we have today, once you go digital, somebody can make a copy of that digital asset, and then the copy can be copied and modified, right? You have no way to know which is original, which is fraud, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to meet W. Scott Stornett, the inventor of blockchain, who was actually going to write the forward for that book, but he fell sick due to COVID. But in 1991, Scott and Stuart Haber, when working for Bellcore, came up with this idea that how do we make a timestamp immutable? Timestamp is the clock on a computer that you can change. Because you can change it, I can take a document that you created, make my changes to it, put an earlier timestamp and say, I created it before you did. So they tried to solve that problem, and they said, let's have copies of document in multiple places, the timestamp, right? Let's do a cryptographic hash to make sure that nobody can change this, right? So if I have a copy and you have a copy and a few other people have copies, and now it is all cryptographically hashed, it is a little bit more secure. Satoshi Nakamoto came along in 2008 and took that idea and added an incentive mechanism for people to keep the network running. More people who have the copies available, then the more secure that network is, because he was trying to solve a double spend problem for money, which is if I send you $1, I shouldn't send that dollar to somebody else. Where they were trying to solve was this in the aftermath of the 2008 crisis. They're trying to solve for the case where central banks don't create another $1 trillion, right?
Yeah.
But the key here is, if blockchain as a technology can be used to secure money, and nobody has hacked that idea yet, right?
Yeah.
And today we can see that blockchain has been used to secure your physical assets like art. NFTs have taken off, right?
Yeah.
What else can you secure in enterprises and when you do business to business? We deal with invoices, we deal with purchase orders, we deal with various kinds of transactional information, right? If I can secure that, then I can actually start tokenizing the value associated with it. So 10 of us could buy a share of an apartment complex, for example, right? But if I go in and buy it, right now, one person will control that, and I can't sell it because there's no market for it. But if somebody could come in and create a trustable, visible to people, transparent framework, say, hey, you know what, 10th of a share is worth so much. Oh no, I can subdivide into 100th of a share is so much, and you can create a marketplace. There are so many applications that can be created based on this underlying infrastructure of creating trust.
Right. So this is a whole new economy.
Yes, absolutely, whole new economy. This is how internet should have been.
Exactly. This is how internet should have been. It's a mess right now. If you look at
it is a mess because what happened was, I was listening to this webinar earlier today, and this gentleman as a VC, he was articulating this very well, right? When you are talking to Google, you're searching, right? You type in the first character, then it starts giving you expansions, right? When you
Yeah.
type in the second character, starts giving expansions. You think you are on the World Wide Web. They have indexed maybe 4%, maybe 0.4%. I'm just quoting his words, right? Of the entire World Wide Web. And you are a non-playing character who has
Mm,
no influence on what Google does. It's a, for-profit company under the Alphabet banner
mm,
that is taking your intent and selling it to advertisers. Their real customers are the advertisers.
yeah.
So this whole web internet technology has been served by these big companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, uh, the FANGs. And so this is where our S&P 500 conversation came from. If you
Mm,
look at last year and say, wow, this S&P 500 stock market did fantastic. Go through which companies did fantastic, right?
right.
Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Tesla, Microsoft. You take the top 8 or 10 companies, they account for bulk of the growth of the S&P 500. So
Mm,
you and I think that the stock market is doing great because S&P is doing great,
but it's,
but go look at the main street. Look
yeah,
at how many restaurants closed. Look at how
yeah,
many small businesses got affected. If
exactly.
those people are struggling, why do we think this is doing well just because we're looking at an index like this?
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So for entrepreneurs, there are so many problems that you can see
Mm-hmm.
that today you don't have trust, you don't have transparency, and this technology can be used to achieve that. And if you can provide a solution for that, there are so many different ways of monetizing that you didn't have access to before.
Yeah.
Whether you call it coins or tokens or shares or there's DAOs, there's different ways to do things that are far more efficient. And the other example that this VCs showed,
Yeah.
some of the newer organizations
Mm-hmm.
with 10 to 20 people are transacting more volume
Mm,
and creating more value than 100-year-old companies with 200,000 people.
correct. Exactly.
So that means when you start creating this trusted framework and have people coming on it, and business happens at the speed of trust,
Mm-hmm.
my favorite quote. So if you can, if I have trust, let's say I trust my parents, I will listen automatically, right? If I don't have trust, then I ask all these questions, checks and balances, slows things down, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a trusted framework and you can trust in the math and people can look at it and look at the software and say this is solid, then all the rest of the stuff will come. It'll be built on top of it because you can offer value. It'll be a whole lot cheaper because if you only need 20 people instead of 200,000 people, you're going to be a whole lot more productive.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. This is also going to be one of my favorite quotes. Business is going to happen at the speed of trust. How can we build that trust? Be it
Exactly.
by technology or leadership or culture or competition, whatever it is.
It's a
How can,
combination.
yeah,
It's
it's
a
a combination.
combination of technology with the processes that go. I mean, today we have trust technologies like USD ADA certification.
Right,
That's a form of trust. Companies
right.
have brands. Brands happen, it's a form of trust because you execute the same thing over and over again consistently. So that's a brand, right? That technology, if you can start codifying some of that into software, it is
Yeah,
far more efficient than if you had to have a person who may do some things today one way and tomorrow it does something else, or an organization that does something and changes their mind tomorrow.
right, right. So this is amazing. Something which all companies should make it as their core value.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, in fact, and we were recognized by Gartner last year
Mhm.
in 2 out of 3 blockbuster trends for blockchain.
Yeah.
So, one of those trends was truth in supply chain.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. Such a beautiful vision of the upcoming future. And we are also fortunate to talk to somebody who's laying the brick, the groundwork, the foundation of this amazing futuristic infrastructure, which is going to happen. No doubt about it. It's already happening. So, Sunil, thank you so much for your valuable hour where you elucidated every bit fundamental about blockchain and the decentralized internet and the infrastructure enabling it to all of us. Truly thankful for your time, and definitely would love to have you back. Any last thoughts before we part ways with the podcast?
Thank you, Vida. I really appreciate having the opportunity to come and talk here. And this was a fantastic interview. And the opportunities for all of us to build this thing together. Some people can create the software, some people can provide the marketing, some people. Fundamentally, what we're doing is we're creating a better world that is on a foundation of trust. And we need to be diligent to make sure that we're not putting fake NFTs out and losing the values of trust, right? We want to
Yeah.
make sure what we're putting out is trustworthy.
So, to that note, to Sunil's amazing vision about creating a trust friendly world here, we like to wrap up this podcast with Sunil and to a much better and trustworthy world. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.